So I'm 9 weeks pregnant now, and I just thought it'd be neat to pause and just kind of chat through and talk about what's going on in this pregnancy so far. So 9 weeks is not very far. I think the shock about it is still kind of dissipating. It still feels very surreal and a bit unreal, especially since this wasn't a planned pregnancy, and it was rather surprising. We are, for the most part, really happy and excited. I am happy and excited. We'd been telling people we were done having babies, but there was this small part of me that didn't feel entirely settled about that, if I'm honest. And I think even just recently, in the time leading up to finding out I was pregnant, I started to kind of get a little bit of the baby fever coming back again, which surprised me, but it was coming. So though I don't know if I would have had the courage to intentionally choose to get pregnant again, I'm glad that we are. And at this point in the pregnancy, physically, I'm feeling like pretty freakishly normal. And to be fair, in all of my previous pregnancies, and this is my 7th pregnancy, I have felt fine, like pretty good. You know, I'm not one of those people who gets the morning sickness. I don't have like varicose veins or any crazy symptoms. I don't even get tender nipples. It's just pregnancy has, don't hate me, but it's just really been mostly pretty easy for me. So it shouldn't be terribly surprising that it's that way again this time, but it feels even easier than usual. And I keep wondering why that might be. And I think it probably has to do with a few factors. Like, for the first time since my firstborn was born, I am sleeping through the night consistently every night. So I can actually rest, which is something you need a lot of first trimester, right? That the tiredness factor is really real. But I'm actually getting rest, so I don't even feel excessively fatigued most days, whereas usually in the past that has been a primary complaint for me. And then also, this is the first time since my firstborn that I'm not nursing one of my other children during my pregnancy. Obviously, nursing a child while also growing one in your body is extremely taxing, and this time I don't have both going on at once. And then the third reason I think that this pregnancy might be easier is that this is also my largest gap in ages. All my other babies were between 20 and 24 months apart, and these two will be 3.5 years apart. It's a pretty significant difference, and because it's a longer time frame, I think it means that my body has had time to replenish its stores, and its reserves. So I'm just kind of coming into it with a little more strength physically than maybe I would have if I had my 5th child right after my 4th one. So I sometimes am bloated, like especially in the evenings. I'm so bloated that I look like 5 months pregnant, but that's not even every day. Sometimes I'll have a slight stretching sensation, kind of like in my lower abdomen, probably the round ligaments stretching and or my uterus stretching a bit. And I just feel like I'm getting chubby, like I'm holding on to weight in a way that I don't normally. I can feel like just kind of thickening of my thighs and my butt and my midsection. But not my breasts. My breasts are still totally deflated from breastfeeding 4 other babies for like 8 years straight. So that's pretty much it for my symptoms. Oh, and some hunger. I feel like some days excessively hungry, whereas I'm not usually a huge appetite kind of person. So emotionally, I think because of how easy it is, there are days when I feel really just worried and almost convinced that this baby has already stopped growing and it's just a matter of time before I start bleeding, or it's confirmed to me in some other way that the baby's already gone. In other words, I find myself really fearing and almost being sure that I've had a miscarriage. And then other days I don't. So it is crazy to me that no matter how many times you have been pregnant, and no matter how much you know and how many women you've worked with who are pregnant, as I have as a birth worker and birth keeper, how I can still become a puddle of like worry and fear and Googling anxiety, you know? Just Googling things that there isn't really an answer for, and and yet this like desperate attempt to try to normalize my experience and know that other people feel similarly and that there's nothing to be worried about. And it's actually I really annoy myself because I know better, like I know these things, and yet knowing all the things can't save you from early pregnancy worry, I don't think, especially if you are a mom who's had losses in the past like I have. You just never can quite glide through a pregnancy and ignorant bliss. It's also, I think, because of the surprise element of this, emotionally, it's been kind of grappling with a season that I thought was ending is now kind of re-beginning. Namely, I thought that we were exiting the season of, like birthing babies and tending to newborns and nap schedules and diaper changes and just that high needs and breastfeeding. Like, we thought we were done and now we're not. So just kind of emotionally adjusting to re-entering a season that I thought we were just exiting. That has been part of my emotional struggle this time. And also, I think for a few reasons I've been struggling with emotions of embarrassment, I guess, about being pregnant again, because this past year has been incredibly difficult for our family financially. And so it feels irresponsible almost to be adding another child into the mix. And also because of my age, I'm 39 right now, and I'll turn 40 about 3 months before this baby is due to make their appearance. And that I just never pictured myself having babies after 40. I had kind of always said, I'm going to be done having babies by the time I'm 37. And indeed, my last baby was born when I was 36. So it's, of course, a very arbitrary number in many ways, but it's the one that I had kind of locked in my head. Like, it was the story I was telling myself. And then, of course, it's true statistically that pregnancies at the age of 40 and above are higher risk for certain things like miscarriage and twins and Down syndrome and stillbirth and preterm birth. And I'm really aware of those things. I am, however, choosing to not focus on them and not dwell on them because it's not helpful. It helps nobody for me to get all hung up on those statistics. The best thing that I know I can do right now for myself and for this baby is simply to just take good care of us and expect the best and visualize the best and pray into the best outcomes and the best scenario and kind of assume the best instead of assuming the worst. But some days that's hard to do. We also had been planning some decisions for this coming year, like potentially a move. Well, we had been planning to move to another state to be close to some extended family in a season of their life when our proximity felt important. And we kind of are just reevaluating the details of what that will look like. And I am kind of grappling with, like, can I still even do it? Am I up for starting over in a new place and pouring energy to these areas? I thought I was gonna have that energy available, but now there's a baby on the way. Am I gonna be able to do that? So there's just been kind of some life reevaluation stuff going on here too. So spiritually, I think the work in this pregnancy so far has been very similar and actually so much a mirror to what I would say life in general has been about for me this past year, which is standing in this place of in between what has been and what will be, and there's so much tension there because you don't know where you're headed, and sometimes you long for where you were, but you can't rush any of it. So just having to stand on this bridge between here and there and have a posture of trust and just keep taking every single worry and concern and anxiety and to Jesus and just pray into those things as they come up and just try to invite the Holy Spirit to walk through all of that with me. And with this pregnancy, the tension of there's this hope, this hopeful expectation that this tiny little grape-sized nugget of a baby in me will come to full fruition as a chubby, laughing, full-term baby that I can hold in my arms in July. And yet also knowing that it's very real that won't happen, and that whenever we're carrying life inside of us, we're also carrying the possibility of death and loss, and that's real. And so living between those two spaces has been a real challenge and an area for spiritual growth. So let's get, a little more practical. I'll share too what's going on. so far, I mean, prenatal care when you're only 9 weeks pregnant is really nothing. Like, you don't really go to prenatal appointments yet. I mean, some people do. I am opting out of early ultrasound. I haven't done that actually for any of my pregnancies besides my first one. So that will not be happening. But what I'm doing right now is really just trying to take care of myself, let myself rest a lot, eat really good foods, trying to be inspired in eating by this book called Real Food for Pregnancy, which I would recommend highly to any pregnant person. It's just really, really solid. It's mostly just, eating real food and plenty of it, and especially plenty of protein and fat. I'm also taking vitamins, which I can just show you what I'm doing. My primary prenatal vitamin is this Baby and Me by Megafood. Baby and Me 2 actually. And I chose the 2 because it has the methylated forms of the B vitamins, which is turning out to be, according to recent research, really important, especially since many of us don't have the ability to methylate our B vitamins by ourselves. And I was looking for a prenatal that did not have folic acid in it, and instead has the folate in the L5-MTHF form, which this does. So this has been really good. I'm feeling really good with this one. It never makes me feel queasy like some prenatal vitamins I've taken in the past have. I'm also taking omega-3 fish oils by Nordic Naturals, most trustworthy brand out there that I'm aware of. And I have, I've been taking some zinc for a while. My naturopath did some muscle testing and found out this was an important and lacking thing for me, so I'm still continuing with the zinc. That might not be a standard prenatal thing. I also have Young Living Super B, and sometimes I'll take a little bit extra of this if I do feel a little queasy or a little down. And then lastly, it's winter here in Michigan, and winter tends to be horrifically difficult for me anyway, but also just knowing how important vitamin D is for a developing fetus. So I am taking vitamin D3 with vitamin K2 added to it, which increases the absorption and usability of the vitamin D3. And this is the Metagenics brand, so I'll be taking this all winter for sure. Also, just redefining prenatal care, I guess. I did make some prenatal record keeping sheets because I do hope and intend to do most of my prenatal care myself this time around. Kind of a unassisted pregnancy probably for most of the time. But I'm also, so on those prenatal record sheets, I have all the things that your OB or midwife would track, your weight and your fundal height, fetal heart tones, blood pressure, weight, temperature, urine analysis, things like looking for blood, glucose, nitrates, ketones, etc. And then all the symptoms that you might have during pregnancy. And I think that I think it will be fun for me to track a lot of those things, but I was also challenged by a midwife friend of mine to remember that prenatal care is not primarily clinical measurement of anything. It is primarily just taking good care of ourselves, holistically, seeking out peace and pleasure and stress reduction and healthy relationships and moving our bodies in ways that feel good and resting and feeding ourselves appropriately and seeking out joy and keeping our mindsets positive. And all of those things are really what prenatal care is. And the clinical measurements are pretty secondary to that. That's been a really good reminder for me. So even though I will geek out and do my little sheets in a little while, for now I'm focusing on the non-clinical aspects. So we're only 9 weeks, and so much can change and happen. But of course, as a birth geek, I'm already thinking about what kind of birth I hope to have with this baby. My last 4 were all home births with a midwife, the same midwife every time. And she was wonderfully hands-off for me, pretty much with everyone, in all the best ways. I don't mean that in a negative way. But by the time my 4th birth was coming around, I remember in the days and weeks leading up to her arrival, whenever I would visualize her birth, I kept picturing myself being alone, like with just my husband in the periphery, in a dark bathroom, having her by myself. But I didn't feel like I wanted to fire this amazing team I had created of my midwife and her student, who is also one of my very good friends, my birth photographer. You know, I just had this good team lined up, and I felt like I can't fire them. But there was this part of me that started waking up in that pregnancy to the desire to kind of just take more ownership and responsibility for birthing my babies, and to do it kind of on my own. And since Maeve was born 3 years ago, I think I've been learning and diving even deeper into that subject of what's often called unassisted childbirth or free birth, which I actually prefer that term now. And the more that I learn about it, the more it appeals to me. In fact, so much so that I had been carrying a little bit of remorse that I wasn't going to be having any more babies, because that would mean I wouldn't be able to have a free birth. And that felt disappointing. Not like disappointing enough to intentionally have another child just so I could experience free birth, but I will admit that when I found out I was pregnant, after the initial shock wore off, one of my first thoughts was, oh, maybe I can have that free birth I want now. So that is kind of what I'm hoping for. Excuse my phone in my pocket. I don't think my hubby's totally there yet. So there will be some further conversation and prayer about that for us to engage in before I can make the decision fully. But another factor is we will probably be moving when I'm about 5 or 6 months pregnant, I think, or 7. So even if we chose to hire a midwife, I'd be needing to find a new one in the area that we're moving to, which feels honestly a little bit daunting. So I'm leaning towards possibly just having a doula or some other non-medical support person present, and then putting our money investment not into a midwife but into a postpartum doula. So we'll see. I haven't been sure about using Doppler this time to listen for baby's heartbeat. I do have a good friend who's a student midwife, and she said she'd be happy to help me listen. And I think that we might do that in a couple weeks. I think I'm leaning towards that right now. I didn't want to do it too soon, because if she tried and couldn't find it, I know we'd worry even more. But if we wait till week 11 or 12, the chances she'll be able to find it right away are much faster. And I think that would be better for my anxiety level. So I'm thinking I'll have her come over and do that in a couple of weeks with me. And if so, I will record that as well. What else am I planning? I'm realizing that I need to come up with some sort of meaningful way to move my body during this pregnancy. Exercise and fitness have never been my strong suit, to be quite honest. The only form of exercise I tend to really enjoy is walking in the woods. So maybe I just need to start doing that again, even though it's winter. I'm also wondering, though, about possibly getting like a YouTube playlist of some prenatal yoga going and practicing a bit of that at home in the early mornings before my kids wake up. But I'm aware, like that's on my radar, that I need to get that built into my life during this pregnancy. The other thing that I did, it was Black Friday recently, and the only thing I bought on Black Friday was one of those, it's called Sneak a Peek. It's a DNA blood test to determine your baby's gender. And you can do it as early as 8 weeks, which is crazy to me. And the reason I ordered it was because I'm not sure that we're going to do a 20-week anatomy ultrasound scan this time. But with every other one of our babies, we have found out the gender, and we've had a reveal using cake with like the middle layer of frosting is either pink or blue, and we've had a party around that, and it's just become a really special ritual and thing we do as a family, and I want to be able to do it again, but I don't necessarily want to go have an ultrasound. So this at-home blood test, I think, could be our alternative to ultrasound this time. That will also still allow us to have our gender reveal party without influencing our baby with ultrasound. Because the more I'm learning about ultrasound in recent years, the more I'm just becoming a little uncomfortable with it. And I'm realizing that actually it's not recommended for routine use. So unless I have a specific concern, I think I'll skip it this time. It's tempting though, now that I have this DNA kit in the house, like I could do it any moment, any day I could find out if my baby's a boy or girl. But I'm sure we'll wait at least until we've heard a heartbeat, and possibly might just even wait till closer to the halfway mark anyway. to have that kind of party moment and the gender cake reveal, simply because that'll give me something to look forward to. It's a fun halfway mark celebration, and I've always loved that. I've also been palpating my uterus, or palpating my belly a lot lately, trying to see if I can find my fundus. And I know it's too soon technically, but I'm still checking periodically, just kind of waiting for that fun moment when it finally pops up from above the pubic bone and can be felt. I've loved knowing, thanks to having apprenticed as a midwife for a little bit a few years ago, that like being able to palpate and feel your own fundus and then measure your own fundus, and then later on when the baby's bigger to like assess fetal positioning and stuff using just your hands is so cool to me, and I love that. So I'm just kind of excited to be able to kind of do that for myself to some extent this time around. So I think that's about it. Thanks for listening if you're still here and watching. I hope that these videos will be a fun way to just kind of transparently share this journey of this pregnancy on emotional, physical, spiritual levels, as well as practical levels. And then ultimately, hopefully, to be able to share our actual birth as well in some way, shape, or form. Have a great day.